passionate about Cleveland sports.
He's going in! Touchdown!
Browns, Indians, Cavs, the Big Ten, and more.
Cleveland is a city of champions once again!
Andy and Jarid, Cleveland and beyond.
A swing and a drive! To deep right!
Here are your hosts, Andy Billman and Jarid Watson.
Hello and welcome, Andy and Jarid, Cleveland and beyond. He's Andy Billman, I'm Jarid Watson, and this podcast is brought to you by Waiting for Next Year. Check them out, original Cleveland sports reporting at waitingfornextyear.com. This episode is your 2019 Indians recap, and we're going to go ahead and look forward to 2020. What a full year for the Tribe, and to help us break things down, we're going to bring in Mandy Bell as well. So let's dive into the season that ended with, unfortunately, no playoffs and a second-place finish for the Tribe.
Cleveland Indians.
Well, when we were doing this podcast last November, it was a very, I guess October, it was a very frustrating ending to the year for the Astros. And sadly, that loss kind of carried the tone. It really never changed throughout the year. We're going to go through 10 different storylines throughout the year. But really, with all the PR from Bauer and Dolan and everything that went on with it was positives too with the All-Star game and young players and everything that went on with Cookie. We were so sad to hear about what he was battling and then his comeback. Really, this season was defined to me, Jared. My number one topic to start off was injuries. Yeah. It just felt like every time you and I would talk, it's like, oh, a new guy goes on the DL. Oh, a new setback for someone. I mean, to refresh people's brains. It started really in March and February. Frankie Kipnis in the spring, they were out. And then into April, Kluber and Clevenger. Think about that. Within basically a 3-month period, you lost Frankie, Kipnis, Kluber, and Clevenger. And then shortly after that, Carrasco. Naquin was gone for the year after the summer. J-Ram, Brad Hand's dead arm. Salazar, Zimmer, who we had hopes for at times. Maybe not so much Salazar, but we certainly had hopes for Zimmer. They don't come back. And Jared, it goes on. Cody Anderson, I didn't mention here. It just
strange injuries too, hand injuries, Weird stuff. It just was stuff that you could have never predicted that you were going to get what you got. What Carrasco had to deal with. The Naquin knee injury, that was right. Wasn't that what happened? He slammed his knee. I think I remember watching that.
Yep.
As soon as he hit the ground, I think I texted you right afterwards. Oh, it's not good. And what the bummer with the pitching injuries too was a lot of that stuff happened early on in the season where the team was still trying to figure out who the outfield was even going to be. It just was never, ever, ever a moment in the season until, let's say, after the All-Star break. I guess comparably to the first half of the season, things calmed down a little bit, but then you're dealing with those hand injuries that. J-Ram having surgery, and God, he came back and had those 3 home runs. But there's no overcoming all of that, Andy. There just isn't. The team was never able to take a breath. That's what it was. Right.
That's what I was going to hit it, so I'll play off what you said. No matter all these other things we're going to talk about that might have been negative, if you don't have a healthy team like the Indians don't have, you don't really have a chance. Even with the surging Twins. Even with everything else was going on, Jared said it, I'm going to hammer it. How can you, think about this. When we came off the October loss to the Astros, and we would have said a year later, you don't make the playoffs, but you have a hell of a year, but you basically don't have Kluber. Clevenger misses 2 months. Frankie and Kipnis don't start the season. And J-Ram and Naquin and Brad Hand, they all have injuries throughout the year. That's a lot for a team that doesn't have a lot of budget to build on. And so, we're going to go through the other things.
That's why it drives me nuts, Andy, when I hear people complaining and saying, get rid of Tito, as if he didn't. This team won 93 fucking games. Somehow, some way.
There are 3 people. If you're saying these things, you should be really put to shame. Yes. Francona, Chernoff, Antonetti. They did a hell of a job. I want to see everybody else try to shuffle these lineups. We didn't even mention Jeffrey Rodriguez, who is becoming a big starting pitcher. He basically never comes back this year. The injuries go on and on. Think about that. At one point, you say, holy cow, we actually have Rodriguez pitching well. We weren't even expecting him to be a starter, and here he is, and he's pitching beautifully. And then we lose him for the year because he basically never comes back either. He pitches, I think, once or twice in September, late September, when the season's well over. So even things like that, it just never stopped with this team.
Nope.
So if you want to go on this Tito and Antonetti and Chernoff, well, maybe turn up and really take a big step back. How in the fuck are they supposed to win with even injuries like Jeffrey Rodriguez? You cannot get things going.
And they did
then on
win.
top, oh my God.
And they did win. Any other season, 93 wins get you. I mean, they had a better record than 3 teams that got it. So,
well, they did. Here's the big thing about these injuries.
cannot complain.
The only thing that this does, which we're going to get to in a minute, is it built character.
Yes,
And this team really came,
yes.
and this team really came together about it. And this team had a really good. It was very hard to root against the Indians this year, from my perspective. I found this team to be very rootable. But all that to be said, if you can only handle so many injuries, and I think injuries really took this team out. We'll go through the rest of the list, but I think the injuries was really the thing. The second thing, you could go Bauer, but I'm going to go Dolan's first. Is I think those articles that came out in late winter really set this weird vibe, throughout the whole year. And I don't know. I've never met the Dolans, and they really don't seem like to me bad people. But Jared, when you put out not one, not two, but basically 3 different publication articles saying the same thing, how you don't want to spend money and how you're okay sitting back, it just is not a good look.
Doing the line. He sat down too on STL.
Yeah, it's just not a good look.
Game. No,
it's just not a good look.
No, and the comments, you got to think in sound bites. The comments on Lindor, you had to know that those words, it only took a few words. Enjoy him while he's here. How did he not know that enjoy him while he's here would not be taken?
And then to reinforce it in a different article in an interview.
God
I mean, Dolans really need to recognize it's okay to say limited things. It's okay to say we are hamstrung by certain things. But when you peer over the table.
And we make more money. We make more money when we don't win.
Ooh, boy. Yeah, don't say
ugly,
that.
Ugly.
And then when you take a look around the corner and you see the Royals are selling for a lot of money. A lot of money. I would really slow
the Royals.
roll.
The Royals sold for what, $1 billion?
$1 billion. And on top of it, for a quick history lesson, you and I know this, but just in case people don't, Gateway was built off taxpayers' money. His whole foundation was built. Now, they put some money back into it, and they put some new foundations. But let's be fair. All this is because of the Cleveland people back starting in 89.
Yeah.
So to all these different things Dolans did, and for how much I love this team, the Dolans, I actually think, need to really sit and think about how they're going to be perceived going into 2020. Because it did not work in 19. And I'll be honest, Jared, they're going to have a fire brush if they do that again. They cannot even go close to what they did this year. Can't. That message has been heard, and you need to get off that fucking message.
What's crazy about it is the the gif of oh my God, why do I do this every damn time, Andy? Of Homer Simpson. Jesus Lord. Where you know what I'm talking about? Where he like backs back into the bushes.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of what the Dolans did.
Yeah.
In regard to this,
true.
where it came out, said some shit. It pissed everyone off, and then he just kind of backed into the bushes. And now you never saw anything or heard anything again the rest of the year. Didn't try to fix it. Didn't try to. Nope. It was just stop talking. Just stop talking. There's nothing else. Andy, I don't know. I don't. What was strange was I don't remember that being a thing that Paul Dolan's done, but that he's done in the past. These interviews and articles and all this stuff. Is it? Why now? Why was it this one? Why did he feel like he had to say it? What exactly what was the plan? What was the strategy? What was the overarching theme besides poor me? Really? I mean, that's really all it was a poor me.
A public therapy session.
And come on. You are talking. You have to be more aware than that. I would fire whoever his PR folks are that told him that was a good idea.
Terrible job.
Mr. Dolan. Hi, Jared Watson here. I've been doing PR, public relations, public affairs, long time, former military public affairs. If you need somebody to help you out with this stuff and with the strategy, give me a call before you just go and do and say and just let the shit come out. Just give me a call. Give me a call. We'll talk a little bit. All right. God bless.
I think we've hammered the Dolans a lot, but I'll say it one more time.
We can keep going. And at the same time, it's not in a way where I'm not on that train where I want to beat him up and I get rid of I hate the Dolans. I'm not one of those guys either.
No, but I think, but here's the line I was going to say. I think it's very fair. And I think he's earned all of it.
He did.
And he needs to really realize that this is a big offseason for Dolan. I never think I would say that about an owner, but it is. He needs to be very careful, as I'm sure he's going to have some opening statement again. He needs to be very careful for how that's treated. So, those are the first two topics. But if we're all going to be honest, the topic number 3, which came out because that's the only way he can do it, a blaze of fire, was the Trevor Bauer PR explosion. Whether it's dating tips, whether it's him doing his analytical stuff, he did a whole production theme, which I'm not sure where that's at anymore. Yeah. And then you get to this whole thing about, I'm going to be this, and I have all these plans, and arbitration. He's sending out invitation cards and tongue-in-cheek humor, but I think chided the Indians, and I don't blame the Indians. I'd be chided too. So all these things come about, and boy, on the field, outside of 1 or 2 starts in early April, Bauer was just flat. He had a good start, then a bad start, horrible start. It was not the Trevor Bauer needing. So, going back to topic 1, you have all these injuries, and your so-called ace, it can't even do anything, can't even really lead the team. Game to game, you never knew what you're getting from Bauer.
No, you wanted him to step up. I told you he's not going to. He's not that guy.
Yeah, and you were right. And you're right. So all this, and by the way, he had games, he would have good games against good teams and then get blown out by the Orioles. It was so strange. It was such a strange year for him. Mm-hmm. And you could feel it building in the background a little bit, but he started going, like Jared always, and you hit on and put on wonderfully. Like, he'd go on social media and get little spats, do little things, but, you kind of take it with a grain of salt. And then we all know where it's coming to in Kansas City on that day where he chucks the ball over the outfield. And as we all alluded to, really chucked his Cleveland career into the outfield as well on that play.
Chucked his own career with it.
He has not been the same since. He has not been the same since. And we've talked about it for people who missed it. What Trevor Bauer did also leaving Cleveland was bullshit. He showed up the Indians by doing that walk around the stadium and doing press conferences, doing the game. It's all a bunch of crap. I have nothing against Trevor Bauer. And I do like some of the things Trevor's about. But this whole thing of, I like analytics and I like all this stuff. That's great. And I like all this attention. That's all great. Hey, you're going to then feel the backlash in social media. You're going to have, it's natural. It's on our society today. It's not fair, but it's in society.
Everything he's gotten has been fair, Andy.
It's been very fair. Like the Dolan's been very fair.
Yes.
And by the way, you want to brag about, hey, I need 1-year contracts? Well, buddy, you have never been more fucked in going in arbitration this year. Because yes, you might get paid well, but think about this, Trevor. You may want a longer term deal. Because you may want multiple years to stay in a franchise.
Well, he's at a point in his career where I don't think people are going to want him for any longer than a year.
Jared, I think it's going to be tough too. I don't
know that his arm is going to. He's at square one in a sense that he's going to have to really prove himself. And I don't know. I've thought about this a lot, Andy. It's like the bumpers that Tito and the rest of the organization put up for Trevor are a part, whether he likes to recognize it or not. That's where his success came from.
Oh, no, you're right.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, the one thing that Trevor
aided in his success. Without that, he's a mess. He's a mess. He doesn't realize it, but he's a mess. And you can see it in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I keep stepping on you. It's my bad. No, Trevor had a hard time saying, I am a part of a team. Trevor would acknowledge he's on a team. Trevor would acknowledge teammates, but he never really felt like he was on the team. And I know there's a lot of people on social media in Cleveland Indians fans that feel differently. And by the way, you have a right to your own opinion. But taking a step back and really withdrawing myself, it was always really about Trevor more than it was about the team. And I feel for Trevor because I think Trevor has some really good qualities, and I like how he thinks sometimes in certain avenues. Not all of them, but in certain avenues. But sadly for him, he can never control it. And I'll be honest with you, the day of the Kansas City game, I was texting with Jared, and I told Jared, I go, I think he's tilting. I think they need to get him out now. And you let him go to that next batter, and he flipped out because it reminded me of what what I see all the time in Little League and in high school and middle school games where a player's having a meltdown. And you don't see in the pros, but boy, we saw it this year with Trevor Bauer. The bigger thing, too, with Bauer, because I don't know how much I want to talk about his career after that. The bigger thing about Bauer is this is another reason why this team finished second. They needed Bauer to really step up, to really be a big pitcher, to make some big plays, to do some big things. And Jared, they never got that from him all year. Again, he'd have a good start here and there. He would look great, but boy, it was never consistent. And I'll be honest with you, it doesn't get talked enough. That played a big contributing role in why the Tribe didn't make the playoffs, in my opinion.
Well, this is where we're at now. Trevor's gone. Kluber gets his $17.5 million.
Not surprised. Not surprised, by the way. Not surprised.
And I think it sets up next year's rotation perfectly at this point.
Yes. Let's breathe in some positivity. Topic 4, and I actually forgot that it's on the rundown. Let's go Carlos Carrasco first, Cookie Strong. Poor Carlos. We all know his story now. We all, our hearts sank. It was, and the thing is too, when his injury, when he first went out, we didn't have the knowledge about what was going on in the background. So it was also weird. And by the way, appropriately so. They had to figure out what was really going on with Carlos. But how he handled it, how he was beloved in that dugout, you could really, we always heard Carlos was really well liked by the team. Boy, did that show up when his injury happened. And you could see the love and support he got from not only his team, but the community and the Indians organization. Jared, for a year that we talked about 3 things right at the top that sadly were negative. Cookie Carrasco and Carlos Carrasco was a big shining star of brightness. It really made you feel good to see him pitch. Yes, he struggled out of the bullpen. Yes, he wasn't himself. But my gosh, there's a bigger story here. It's not about balls and strikes. It's about a man who overcame a lot in a quick period of time. And actually, the thing I love about Carlos, outside of those moments where you could see him get emotional, which I would too, I'd be weeping if people cheered for me like that after overcoming cancer. But, all that to be said, he never really wore that sleeve as an excuse. He was such a competitor when he played out there. You could see him getting frustrated when he's giving up runs. My bigger point here, it is hard not to root for Carlos Carrasco. And not only root for him, but want him to do well in life and well as a person. And you just love him. He is what you want as a person, not just a player, as a person.
I'm still just amazed by the fact that he was able to get back on the mound before the season ended, and the fact that the Indians, as well as him, are both planning on him starting next year. Like that, I don't know what else to say about it.
Amazing story.
I just want everything to keep going well for him. That's all.
I do too.
That's all. And and again, balls and strikes, I'm not worried about it. If he struggles next year, whatever, if things change on the baseball, on the diamond, then
right.
They change on the diamond. I at the end of the day, as long as Carlos is healthy, then I'm happy. And I got to say, and we talked about it, and I don't want to compare the two, but in a sense we can a little bit. Leonis Martin, that's all I cared about with him too. And it didn't work out with him on the field afterwards.
No, it did not. No, it did not. But same thing. You're right. Good comparison. That's good comparison. The second half to this, and it's hard to pivot, but I do want to do a 4A here. The meteoric, we all love Carlos Santana. And Carlos Santana coming back was a good story. But my gosh, at one point at the end of August, you could argue he wasn't going to win the MVP, Jared, but Carlos Santana was going to be in the running. And in fact, I'm sure still he'll get a couple third-place votes in there. Mm. Carlos Santana, the Carloses, Carrasco and Santana carried this offense on his back throughout April. He was one of them. It was a wonderful story, and he's so beloved in Cleveland, as he should be.
I think I told you that, when we were talking about this team struggling to find an identity and to rally around a leader in the clubhouse, that I thought the Indians were going to struggle to do that, and I didn't know who was going to step up. I did know, though, that before Carlos came back to the Indians, that he had thrown that fit in the dugout and was and in a sense, it was just a reminder of how angry he gets if he's playing, because where he was at, that team was basically dicking around, and he wasn't going to put up with it. Is the short of the story, right?
By the way, the Phillies did not make the playoffs again this year with a
There
better
you go.
player on their team.
So, point being, I thought in the back of my mind, maybe it's Carlos. And I swear, coming back to Cleveland must have been something for him, because I honest to God, Andy, I expected him to be like a 220, 230 hitter, and just
the Carlos Santana we've expected. Maybe 250.
I didn't expect anything.
Nothing, but boy, he not only was our 3-hole hitter, because basically everybody else was injured, he was a legitimate 3-hole hitter.
Yes.
He really had a wonderful year. So both the Carloses were wonderful, and it's great to see Santana back. And you know what? He's going to have a special place in our hearts from here on out as Tribe fans. He really made an impression, made the All-Star team. That's how good he played. Mm-hmm. Just a wonderful, wonderful year for Santana. That goes to number 5. The whole All-Star game thing was wonderful in Cleveland. Yep. Cleveland came off well. The game was exciting. What a surprise. We love the city. We are Clevelanders. And boy, did Cleveland show up in 10
Not
in 10
one negative story out of that.
Nothing.
No.
The Cleveland All-Star game was a big success, as we all know. They should have more events there. I think they should have a Final Four. I wish they had an arena. They will never do without an arena, but I hope they get another East Regional Final in Cleveland. I thought Kentucky Notre Dame years ago was an exciting event. There are more things than just Cavs, Browns, and Indians, what I'm trying to say. An NBA All-Star game, which I believe is coming back too. Yep. A baseball All-Star game. NCAA tournaments, these things Cleveland can only handle. They explode with positivity. The All-Star game was great, and the cherry on top, of course, was Bieber. Bieber had just a wonderful game, and it was, it's funny, I'm smiling now. For all the bullshit we had to deal with, the Carloses and the All-Star game, it's hard not to smile. It was such a wonderful 3-day period.
It was.
For the city of Cleveland.
It was
so nice.
I was up there, I believe, the week prior to the All-Star game, and they were already setting up and getting stuff ready, and you could feel it, man. You could feel the city loves. There's something about it. I think part of it is the way that they get dogged in the national media sometimes. And you know that as well as I do, that the only people that talk shit about Cleveland are people that have never been there, right?
Yes.
And there's something about putting Cleveland on the national stage where everyone just gets fired up about it, because we know better.
Yep.
We know better.
Yes.
We love to showcase that city, because there is nothing to not love about it. With my double negative. Now, granted, all right, I'm being slightly hyperbolic. There's things that probably need a little work,
There, but look, there always is.
Right.
Choose Boston, New York.
For any city, exactly. All cities like that.
Not all cities that got their dings, believe me.
Yeah.
All cities do. So,
but when all is said and done, Cleveland's very unique and one of a kind, and a gem that I think that some people take for granted.
Yep. Well, the All-Star game showed all those gems. It really did.
Yeah.
And picking off where Bieber, the biggest positive on the field outside of what we just talked about with 4 and 5, were the young stars rising. When injuries happen, it's now time. The Indians were at that point quickly where they needed youth to really step in and play well. And, read offing these names, it's amazing how well they not only came in, and not only did status quo, they lifted the team to victories. Oscar Mercado, Aaron Savali, Zach Plezak, Jeffrey Rodriguez, Nick Whitgren, Yu Chang, Bieber, I would actually put in that category too. And then, down the road, this reliever, James Karnarchak. Oh, man. Woo! I am excited about Karinchak. I don't know, it's Karinchak or Karnchak, but Karinchak, boy, I'm excited about him. Bobby Bradley, Daniel Johnson looming. We didn't see him this year, but he's looming in the background. The youthful stars in Cleveland are rising. It is rising fast. And Mercado gave us a big pump.
He was clutch. That was the thing about Mercado. He was so damn clutch.
Early on, Jeffrey Rodriguez making big starts and doing well in big games. And then Plesac picking up where Jeffrey left off. And then once another guy fell off, like Carlos got hurt, Savali comes. I've never even heard of Aaron Savali until this year. He comes in. He pitches well. Whitgren we kind of knew about but didn't know a lot about. He pitched well. Yu Chang, who we saw come up in late spring, didn't really look like he played the part. Look, I don't know if he's everyday ready, but boy, did he improve. He improved a lot from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. He looked so totally different player. He actually not only played better, he looked big. He played like a guy who was big, strapping young man. And we talked about Karen Chack and Bradley. He's raw, but my gosh, there's the talent there. Oh my God, he is.
He looked the part, man. When
yes, he did.
Stepping into, I just need him to hit the brake and stuff, and then we're good.
I know. He's raw.
The thing
he's
about
raw,
what I love about this is the way that they do it, in the sense that, and Mandy will get into this a little bit more in a little bit, but it's the fact that they force themselves into the lineup by the way they play.
Yeah,
That's how
they
they're doing
did.
It.
They did.
You have to play them. Right.
Yes.
That's the way that their farm system is set up. That's the way that they're playing in AAA is you play your way up there. Don't allow them to deny you the spot.
No, sure.
And again, which is another concern that we'll get into when it has to do with Bradley Zimmer. Because
Yes.
there's a lot of guys that are chomping at the bit and that are playing their way into this lineup. Nipping
on heels for sure. Number 7 is the jumps that Bieber and Clevenger made. We kind of knew what we had in Clevenger, and he pitched. He took another step forward this year. He's going to be in the Cy Young running, in my opinion, next year. And by the way, this is sick. I think Bieber might be right behind him. I think Bieber kind of leveled off a little bit at the end of the year, but my gosh, from where he started, from where he came, Bieber had an unbelievable jump. The big thing here is with young players in any sport, you want to see a consistent, gradual build. And you saw that with Bieber and Clevenger, but I thought they made huge leaps, Jared. I think they actually took the next big step forward where you could see them pitching in October. If the Indians get there next year.
I'll one up you. When was the last no-no in Cleveland? 1981, right?
Yeah, Barker. Last perfect game, too. Yeah.
Now, I think odds are Bieber will throw it before Clevenger, but I think next season one of those guys has a good chance of getting one.
Not wild to say. Maybe get 2 from no hitters. Maybe.
I think that Bieber's got a better chance at it because Clevenger seems to go a little bit deeper strike, pitch wise.
Sure.
But I think that possibility is there.
The big thing
there
here
were 5
is,
or 6, maybe 7 times this season where I was thinking to myself, "Oh man, is this going to be it? Is this going to be it?"
Everybody remarks about the Mets and their young pitching, as they should. I mean, DeGrom's wonderful. But really, Noah Syndergaard and these other parts have really never stepped up to this level. I'm making this comparison because it's amazing how Bieber and Clevenger are. And then in the background, you got Carlos Carrasco and Kluber, which we'll get into the second portion of the show. But Bieber and Clevenger just stepping up. You feel confident. You feel good about them in big starts. And it just is amazing. It's a remarkable, again, I call it a leap. Maybe that's the term I should use. It was a leap forward. They just both played out of their minds this year. Topic 8 is Brad Hand, and this is one of the more split topics you can ever have. Because if you look from April to the All-Star break, Brad Hand was not just great. He was an All-Star and a deserved All-Star. He was lights out. He couldn't do anything wrong. He was touching gold. Even when guys got hits, you're like, oh, it's okay. Brad Hand will get himself out, and he would. And then the All-Star game happened, and I don't know what the fuck happened to Brad Hand. And then his arm goes dead, and all these strange things kind of come about. If you really want to add on to the pile, the December question marks too kind of play in this, but we'll focus this one more on Hand. The reason why I bring this up as a topic is, we just brought up Karen Chack. Brad Hand, Jared, I am so 180 on this from late May and June. I don't know what to make of Brad Hand. I don't know what to expect. I don't know what to think. Brad Hand had one of the strangest, polarizing years I can remember in a long time as a closer.
Yeah.
Very strange.
Yeah. What I think is going to end up happening is, and we can do this and feel comfortable with it next season, is you just see what happens throughout the first few months.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's what you do. You wait and see through the first few months. Now, let me ask you this, Andy, and I don't know how controversial this would be, but why not rotate in closers? Why not have two?
I think the Indians are going down that road.
Why not? Is there? I mean, I don't know.
I guess here's a bigger question.
Is there a reason why you wouldn't do that?
Yep. I guess here's a bigger question. Does Brad Hand, do you feel like, because I guess here's the thing, with closers, it's not unusual to have them get hot and cold, but they'll go back and forth. Brad Hand went from extremely hot to extremely cold like that. And I was trying to remember back, it's like, I don't ever remember seeing it that drastic. Like, again, you'll have hot and cold moments. Like, Mesa would come in and save a game, then he'd blow it. Or it'd be consistently, like, Borowski was consistently just, troublesome. He'd make you nervous. But in this case with Hand, it was really striking the differences. So what you're getting at, I think the big thing that they should do early, Jared, is say he's back, he's our closer, we're going to keep it for the next 2 or 3 months. Or in late mid-March, hey, this is the same. Because I don't think, if it is the same Brad Hand we saw in the last 2 or 3 months, Brad Hand needs to be put on notice that it's not his job. And that job's up for grabs, to what you're saying.
Do you start him the first few months? Hopefully he, this is where it gets tough.
It gets tricky.
Does he?
I don't know.
And he does well enough that you can dish him before the break.
I was going to mention that too.
Right.
I was going to mention that too. And that's why I mentioned throughout the podcast, boy, if you get the right trade, you should trade Brad Hand.
But at the same time, you have to be really confident in what, Karinchak? In who are you going to throw in there?
I don't know. Heffrey? I don't know.
I mean,
Whitgren? I don't know.
I don't know if Whitgren's got.
By the way, I'm not saying anything you're saying is disagreeable. Karinchak looks like a closer.
Right. I think that's where it just feels odd to say that right off the bat. Like, hey, what's up, young man? Come on up and instantly be the closer for the Indians. I
hate to say it. I think he's ready. I think this is like, reminds me of Brad Lidge when he came up from the Astros. It's like, all right, Billy Wagner, we know you're a longtime closer, but this Brad Lidge, Brad Lidge is just that good. I just think you might have that situation here. So as soon as I saw Karinchak.
But if you do, and you're that confident, and you can make the move and get something for Brad,
I don't know.
It just feels dangerous. It feels dangerous if he's doing well to screw up that, that whatever it would be, that thing.
The Indians don't
have at that point.
Right. The Indians don't have as many questions. This is the only one to me it's very murky, is Brad Hand. It's the closer and Brad Hand is very murky.
I don't think. I think middle relievers is a little bit murky, but that's still in a better situation because at least what we're talking about is pulling guys out of rotation. Guys that could be starters and moving them in for length in the bullpen, which I think could end up saving them big time.
I agree
because you don't have to go outside. You don't have to pay anybody. You don't.
And you know what you got.
Yeah.
And you can use that money for other things.
Yeah.
Which goes to now to for people not talking about in game. To me this year I thought it was very, sometimes it's not, but I thought this year is very cut and dry with the Indians. When it comes to number 9. They didn't beat the Rays, they didn't beat the A's, and then the biggest bugaboo this year was the White Sox. But the Indians just could not. They beat them 8 times, but as I mentioned several times, it felt like it could have been 6 or 5 losses. Even some of those wins were really razor thin wins where it just felt like, woo, we won. I mean, didn't really feel confident about it. Those are the 3 teams, and those are the 3 matchups the Indians need to really look at next year. The White Sox, I think that's a thing you can just figure out about what happened, and you can get some answers. But Jared, I thought the Rays and A's was alarming. I really didn't think they were competitive against either one of those teams. They only beat those clubs a combined 2 times. 1 A's win, 1 Rays win. That's alarming. Both those teams made the playoffs. And if you're going to be a playoff team, you can't just get your asses waxed against those 2. If you beat the Yankees 4 out of 7 and you split the Red Sox and you handle yourself really well against the Astros, that's a year you should be going to the playoffs. But because of these 3 teams, I think that's a big reason why the Indians are here. and sitting on the sideline. Huge reason.
That's honestly, you could point to that as being. I mean, besides the injuries, that is the injuries, and that are your two biggest reasons why the Indians didn't get into the playoffs.
Yep.
Hands down. There's nothing else to say about it.
Yes.
You don't beat the team, and on top of that, these are teams that you should be beating. It's not like, well, I can get it. I see. No. Especially the way that you've handled yourself against the Yankees and the Red Sox, and been able to hold your own at least.
I mean, the Astros
with the Astros.
Yeah. By the way, they did.
No reason that they should have struggled with the Rays, A's, and White Sox.
No, you can't.
Especially the White Sox.
Especially the White Sox.
I get it with the A's because I feel like teams like the A's or the Rangers, there's just, or maybe the Angels some years, but they didn't have that this year, where they struggle going out west against those teams. Just at least from my memory.
And by the way, you're right. In recent years, the Indians going to Oakland's been miserable. You're absolutely correct. The Bay Area, by the way, Giants too.
Yeah.
It's just
those are the big reasons. It's annoying, but at the same time, you know what? Next year, you can't do that next season.
You cannot do that next season. Big point. All right, before we get to Mandy Bell, two quick things I got. Well, not two quick things, but one other thing I didn't put on the list, but I want to add quickly. The Indians, too many of these games, Jared, 2-hitter, 3-hitter, shutout, or offensive explosion. The Indians next year can't get it. There will just be so many games this year where it's like, even in late September against the White Sox, we're not going to get a hit anymore. You could just feel it watching the game. The Indians' offense needs to be more consistent, needs to be more driving. And I think part of that's because of the youth. I think part of that, too, is because of the injuries. But that's going to be also something, too. Like,
felt like, I don't remember what it was 2012, 2013, or 2014, but one of those teams in there was very much like this team offensively.
Yeah, sure.
It was the year. What year was it? I think it was the year they actually got in as a wild card.
Yeah, they played the Rays. And 15 was another weird year, too, where
offensively they would explode, and then there would be nights where it's like, what is their problem?
Just fizzle out. And it was so weird. And I don't know if there's much more to expand on that, but, the other, I'm going to bring it up. The other little thing, and I don't know how much longer we have him. I do think Lindor needs to play a little bit better with his bat. Yeah. That Lindor had some little bit of shaky moments in September with his bat. He needs to play better. I thought he got everything he could have out of Santana. And by the way, if the Indians are going to make the playoffs, he finished strong. J-Ram needs to play a complete year. And again, I'll give him a pass. He had one of those years this year. But next year, you really need him to start to finish to be more consistent. The J-Ram of 16, 17, and 18, not 19. Need him start to finish. I said it all year. This felt like the biggest year of rebuilding and retooling. All that to be said, I think 2020 is exciting. To get us into this excitement and to look back at what we're doing and going forward, let's bring in Mandy Bell.
Joining us, MLB.com, Indians.com, beat reporter Mandy Bell. Find her and follow her on Twitter at MandyBell02. Mandy, it was a long-ass season. A lot of, not to use the cliche, but very much a roller coaster for this team. But I want to start with this. Picking up Kluber's option for 17 point whatever million, and not picking up Kipnis. That seems to be the news as of late. What can you tell me about why they decided to pick up that option with Kluber?
I think the feelings that we've been getting, I guess, the last few weeks is they were dead set on keeping Kluber around. I know if you start looking at it and you start seeing how the depth was tested and their pitching depth was what saved them this year. To have them come up and you start to see that and you think of $17.5 million on an already tight budget, and you think that you could spend that elsewhere, especially whenever you're starting to shop around for potentially a third or second baseman to help patch some stuff in the infield and hopefully get another bat. You start thinking about that and it's like, okay, well, this could make sense and you might be able to live without him, but you start looking at it too and it's like this guy has been so much for the Indians, and I know his numbers weren't that great before he went on the injured list this year, and you could tell that nobody was more frustrated than he was that he wasn't able to make it back by the end of the season after he had that oblique strain and everything started to fall apart for him. But it just seems like the Indians were just dead set on making sure that he was going to come back. And all of us, this is my first year here, and this is the first time I've gone through this whole postseason process. I was surprised walking in there that they had already said, okay, this is how we're going to handle our options situation, and everyone else said that that's just completely uncharacteristic for how that worked. So for them to already be dead set on it, it just seemed like that they were ready and they had their decisions made going into it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought that was really, really classy of the Indians to do that. They not only do that, but to also announce Kipnis and Otero, we're not going to be picking up your options. I thought that said a lot about the team.
Well, on top of that, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe I didn't catch this right, but did Chris Antonetti hint at the fact that they would restructure something, or possibly, just because the value isn't there with Kipnis at this moment, but there's a chance that he can come back, or was that just pleasantries on his part?
I don't know. I think it mostly. I don't know. I don't see him coming back. I don't see that working. I don't see that happening. It could have been just something that he wanted to say to say the right thing. I know Kipnis said the same thing whenever he got hurt, but they both parties knew. And when he got hurt, he even addressed the media as if I just played my last game as an Indian. And it just seemed like everyone already knew at that point that he was going to be done. I know that they tried to shop him for a few years. He knew that his option was going to be way too much money at 16 and a half, the 14 and a half with the $2 million buyout. I mean, it just, they knew, everyone knew that this was coming. So I don't think anything was shocking for him, but yeah, I thought the way they handled it and just got it out of the way 3 days after the season ended, I thought that was at least classy on their part, and nothing's going to be looming for the next month.
All right, so to your point, a question earlier, the strength of this team by far is pitching throughout. Just didn't end up the way we thought it would at the beginning of the season. So if I write down the names, Kluber, Carrasco, Bieber, Clevenger, and I'm going to guess Plesac, does that mean Heffrey and Plutko and Savali, do they just move to the bullpen, Mandy? Do they maybe look to trade one of those young arms? I mean, what do you think when you have three arms sitting there? I mean, you obviously have to keep a couple on standby for injuries, but I mean, the Indians have a plethora here of pitchers that can start.
Correct. And I mean, the one thing that Antonetti and Chernoff both always say is you can never have enough pitching depth. And they said it again on Wednesday when we talked to them. They said, we proved to you guys this year why that's true, because you never know how many people could get hurt in a year. They love having as many arms as possible. But like you said, having all those options, especially all those, I mean, it seemed like qualified options from what they showed this year, at least gives you somebody to maybe throw out into a potential trade situation, just so you can have some talks. You can see what you could get. It doesn't hurt to have names like that to be able to just bounce off of ideas off of other GMs around the league and see what you could get for them. It definitely can help them with anything in that regard. It doesn't mean that something would happen, but they can at least listen for different offers, and that's their jobs, and that's what they're doing constantly. But it's tough. I know they said that they look at Carrasco right now as if he's going to be a starter next year. That it doesn't seem like he's going to be back in the bullpen. And I know he wants to get back to being a starter. So if you start looking at that, it comes down between maybe Plesac, maybe Savali. It doesn't work always that they have a great first year and then they come back and they're just even better the second year. So they'll test some things out, and I'm sure that there's going to be a little bit of a learning period for who's going to fit best where. But they have a lot of young guys, and there's going to be some guys having to go up and down, and there's going to be tough conversations after playing such a huge role this year.
What's been great about this situation, Mandy, is that the way that these young kids were forced up, part of that came from the fact that we forced one out. And I just want to touch on it briefly. Trevor Bauer, after he left the team, at least for me personally, I never missed him once. And clearly his plans for how things were going to go the rest of the season in Cincinnati didn't quite work out for him either. Is there love loss here at all with us, at least the Indians? Because I don't feel it.
Yeah, it's different. It's interesting because I know at the end of the year, I got a lot of tweets saying this is why you don't trade pitching for hitting, and this is why you don't trade one of your best pitchers. And I just
what?
I know. I got tweets about that 24/7, and I'm thinking I don't know. You can't assume that he would pitch the same way in Cleveland as he did in Cincinnati. But his numbers after he left were just, it's not what they would have needed to get carried. The way that Puig started in August, then Reyes heated up. Puig cooled off a little bit, but then Puig came back on in full force in a time where they really, really needed a hitter. I mean, the way that those guys were able to step up in different points in those last final 2 months, they if you don't have those bats in the lineup, I don't know if they're able to make the run that they made.
I agree.
So it's really, really tough to try to compare that to say that losing Trevor was the big difference.
That's my point, Mandy, is that this wasn't a starting rotation issue. Those young kids, anyone that they brought up and put in that rotation really outperformed, in my opinion. Where the issues came in was no length in the bullpen. That's where the problem was. I mean, besides when the bats decided
everyone
to die.
ran out of gas. Right.
Yes.
It just seemed like both the bullpen and the offense just ran out of gas, because that was the best bullpen in baseball, if you look at it ERA-wise, through the end of July. Then they turn the page and get into August after they're all starting to get a little bit worn down, and it just was not the same. They were not able to just keep that same consistency. A lot of guys just got tired. I mean, Brad Hand had to miss a week or so with arm fatigue. It just, they got overused, and they just got worn out by the end of it all. And Tito has said it 1,000 times the last week or two, is that everyone just sort of ran out of gas.
Yeah, and I was let's pick up there the bullpen. I want to get back to the running out of gas comment. So the bullpen, that would be the area that I would be focusing on if the Indians aren't going to do any free agency plucking. Do you agree? I mean, I know I like Whitgren. I think Whitgren will come back and be stronger. I love that young kid. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he looks like he's going to be a star. And then you got Brad Hand, who I just think everybody kind of saw what we all saw. I think he just had a bad second half. I don't know what that means going into next year. But I do think the Indians could use some strength from free agency in the bullpen. Do you see the Indians doing that? Or do you see them maybe more relying on what we just mentioned, the Jeffrey Rodriguez coming in and maybe playing a role there or something like that?
I definitely could see them adding somewhere in there. It seems, I think you were referring to as James Krinchak.
Yes.
He definitely looks promising. I know everyone in the organization seems like that. So he's so young, and there's so many places that he can improve. And there's so many, like they say, there's so many things that we need to work out. He's a little bit raw because he hasn't really had any experience, but they said it's so clear his stuff plays, and his stuff plays at the big league level. And I think he could be a big weapon for them next year, maybe starting out the year as wherever they need him, and then maybe starting to settle in as that setup role. And if Brad Hand doesn't pan out to be the first half Brad Hand from this year, then maybe you flip-flop him. Maybe Hand could be a setup guy, and Krinchak could eventually work into that closer role. It seems like he has the stuff for it. It seems like he has the mentality for it. He seems like a guy who is 100% a stereotypical like mentality big league closer to me. It's just that just seems like him. They have their own personality type, and he seems to fit it perfectly. So I could see all that, but Tito does love Nick Whitgren. He's talked about him so many times about the way that he was able to step up. I mean, if you look back, he didn't make the team out of spring training, and he worked his way in, and he was one of the they had in the bullpen this year. So they have some people. There's not a lot of roster turnover this year like there was last year. They have a lot of people coming back. They're not picking up Dan Otero's options, so he's definitely not going to be there. But other than that, it seems like they have a lot, and I wouldn't be surprised if they at least look at some arms that could possibly be added through free agency. I don't think there's any harm in finding a guy or two to at least test out.
Well, I mean, Nick Whitgren's a Boilermaker, and as we all know, Boilermakers are the best athletes. So, I mean, that right there, I mean, come on. I mean, Pilecki, I mean, look, there's no doubt. You got to keep Boilermakers on your team. All right, so the outfield, if we, Jared shakes his head, you knew I was going to go to the Boilermaker comment. By the way, Mandy's a big Penn State fan. They need to take it easy on my Boilermakers. We're a little banged up going into Saturday. All right, so Oscar Mercado, you got Reyes, you got Daniel Johnson possibly. The one guy I want to focus on is Puig, and then I got a second question about Zimmer. But first, Puig, is there a chance they bring Puig back to play the outfield? I know that we are not mentioning Naquin and Luplo, which we know they'll be back. And then what do you think of Zimmer going into next year? But let's start off with Puig. Do you think there's any chance the Indians sign Puig in the offseason?
I know both Antonetti and Chernoff said that nothing's off the table. They don't want to say no to anything. They don't want to completely shut any opportunity out. But I just don't understand why. I mean, I know a lot of people keep saying that they'd love him back. A lot of people loved his enthusiasm. I mean, he can be extremely entertaining to watch.
Yeah, that's exactly why.
Comical.
He's a goofball. I love the looks and stares he gives. That's my favorite thing.
I know. The waving around the base paths. I mean, he brings a layer of excitement that many people don't bring. So, but I don't see why, because the Indians don't like to shell out a lot of money. He's obviously going to cost some money, and when you're thinking of Franmil Reyes as being your everyday right fielder, and you don't want to pigeonhole him into a DH role at 24 years old, I mean, where are you going to move him? He's a right fielder. He's a big guy. He doesn't move swiftly, and Tito has said that 1,000 times. Like, we're not expecting him to turn into the most graceful, like, speedy guy out there. So it's either then moving Puig to left if that's what you're going to do, if you don't want Reyes to be a DH. And then you also have Daniel Johnson sitting in the minors, who has fantastic numbers in AAA once, and it started in AA, and then he got promoted and he even got better. It's hard. His arm, Daniel Johnson's arm, is unbelievable. I remember watching in spring training, and I just stopped dead in my tracks when I was walking. I'm like, man, that is impressive. So he seems like a guy who could really, really contribute. I know the Indians are very excited about his future. If you have both of these guys, you also have Naquin as an option once he gets back from his surgery. I know right now he's projected to be between April and June. That can change no matter what. If there's a setback, if it goes quicker. I mean,
Gotcha.
It's so early to say a time frame. But once he comes back, he could be an option there. If Reyes isn't working out, if Johnson's not ready, it just seems like they have so many different solid options that in right field that they didn't have last year, that you don't really need to consider Puig as much as maybe they could have if they needed him last year.
No, I'm with you. All right, the other big question. Actually, real quickly, Zimmer. And you know what? I'm going to do this again in 2 parts. So, Zimmer, give us what you think is going into his plans in the offseason.
Yeah, and just to jump on that with you, Andy, it can't be ignored, the fact that we're leaving last season and coming into the beginning of this season really stressed out about the outfield, and now we're in a place amazingly
settled.
Just months later with options in the outfield that we would have otherwise not even thought we would have.
So what do you think of Zimmer? What do you think? What's his offseason plan?
That's just tough. I mean, he went to the Indians. They all have their exit interviews before everyone leaves for before the winter, and he said, look, I think I need a normal offseason. The Indians went to him and said, you haven't played in a year. We need you to get some at-bats. And he said that this would be best for him to just not be playing winter ball anywhere, to just to take a normal offseason. He's still obviously working. He's still obviously training. He's doing what everyone else is going to be doing who played the whole year, but he's not getting those live at-bats that he missed for an entire season. And so Tito said on Wednesday, like, okay, well, we might need you to get those at some point. And I think that's sort of alluding to them maybe starting him in AAA, because if he doesn't want to get them in the offseason and he wants to do a normal offseason, it might mean that they need him to start in the minors to build himself back up, because a year off, that is a long time to be away from major league game activity. So I think that he could be starting in AAA.
Wow. All right. Real quickly, as I know you're on the run, I want to ask quickly, what do you think the infield will be at third base? Is it Jose? Is it maybe Yu Chang? Is it someone we're not thinking about as a free agent? And then finally, the big question in the infield, and this is such a larger question, but boy, I have to ask, do you think there's any chance of Lindor being traded at all?
Well, starting with second or third, Jose Ramirez gives them a lot of flexibility. He went to them before he left and said, I will play second, I will play third, as long as I'm not bouncing back and forth. And the Indians said, we respect that. We agree with that 100%. So they have flexibility in their plans. I mean, you look at the second baseman free agent market, it's not loaded. I mean, you start looking through there, you have guys like Jonathan Scope. You have different names on there that are decent second basemen, that it could be a decent bat here and there. You don't really know. You have Brock Holt. But if you want to start looking at third baseman, yes, you have Yu Chang. Is he ready? I don't know if the Indians feel that he's ready. He had a little bit of experience and exposure this year, which is nice. I know they're considering Mike Freeman even as the second baseman. He had a good year. He had a really impressive year for the role that he's in. It's a utility guy is such a challenging role, to never know when you're playing, to just have sporadic at bats, and he's able to stay so consistent for them, and they really, really loved what he was able to do for them this year. So I know he's in the mix. Chang's in the mix. They have Andrew Velazquez who's in the mix. They have a couple different guys that they're thinking about. And then they said, honestly, in the minors, we don't want to talk about anyone who hasn't had major league exposure yet, because
Right.
we want to make sure that that's left up to them. We don't
Right.
want to start picking names. We want people to emerge. But if you look at the third baseman free agent market, you have Moustakas out there. You have other people. So if you want to take that $16.5 million from Kipnis, then maybe you can start looking for that. Maybe you can splurge a little bit more. But then again, you have Clevenger going into his first year of arbitration. You have other things that you have to worry about too. So it's going to be a balancing game. But this front office seems to be able to pull off the magic acts and balance whatever budget that they're given from ownership. So I'm sure they're going through 1,000 different things, and their mind's not going to stop until February.
So my last two, does Lindor get traded? And then you came up with the line, this team ran out of gas. Expand on that answer, because from afar, that's what we observed. Is that kind of the vibe you got in the locker room afterwards? But first, does Lindor get traded, or is he going to be here starting in April of next year?
The way that they were talking about Lindor, it seemed like they did not want to trade him this offseason. Now, does that mean that there's not going to be rumors and there's not going to be discussions? No, because I'm sure they're going to be out there, and I'm sure it's going to be a big topic going into the winter meetings. You can get a lot for him right now. You have 2 years left to control. This is a huge time that you could make a move and bring in a lot, because you saw what Trevor Bauer brought in. And imagine what they could get for Francisco Lindor. But I don't see it happening this offseason. The way they talked about it, just thinking about what they need best for their team, if they're trying to make sure that the goal is 2020 now and they're wanting to put the best team out there, maybe you keep them for half of the season and you start talking about it a little bit more seriously at the deadline. I could see that being a possibility, but I don't know. Something tells me that it's not going to be this offseason, but obviously all of us could be wrong, and they could shock us and they could get that perfect deal, but they won't bite until they know that they got the perfect deal. As far as running out of gas, though, as you were saying, that was basically the vibe in the clubhouse that past week. I mean, they didn't want to say it until it was completely off the table. So when Tito was asked about it, he didn't really say much about the offense. But when we talked to Francisco Lindor after they were officially eliminated, we basically said, "What happened to you guys?" He said, "I didn't hit. Santana didn't hit. Mercado didn't hit. So that should do it." And then Tito basically just said the same thing. He said, I think our guys just ran out of gas. And it's tough. You have a guy like Lindor who didn't take an off day since April 27th. And he battled that ankle throughout the first month or two of the year when he came back. And he played through everything. He played through every bump and bruise. And whenever you do that, I mean, Tito always says he does not take off days. He refuses, and it's like a direct insult to his manhood whenever I even mention it. He said, "I respect that. I like that." But then on the other hand, it just seemed like because of that, he just had nothing left in the tank by the end of the year. And that's whenever everyone started going cold at the worst time that they could possibly ever imagine. So that was basically what it was. And the clubhouse was weird after that elimination night. It's not something that they've experienced in the last 4 years, since 4 years ago. So it was weird. They were all going around the room just hugging each other. They know that the roster turnover is not going to be the same as what it was the year before, but they also know that it's not going to be the same exact clubhouse as what it was this year. And everyone said the same thing. It's horrible, because we wanted to do it with this group of guys. We've been through so much, from Carlos Carrasco's leukemia diagnosis to overcoming like things bigger than baseball like that, and everything else. They said we wanted to do it with this group, but they all just, it just seemed like they ran out of air by the end of it all.
There was so much adversity throughout the year, whether it was Carlos Carrasco, whether it was all the noise from Bauer, whether it was the injuries. I got to tell you that at least the theme on this show between Andy and I, Mandy, we couldn't be angry. I was at the last game of the season at Nats Park, and I stood there and tipped my hat to those guys as they came off the field for the last time. And I'm okay with it. I really am. And I'm looking forward to 2020. I think the Indians as an organization are probably looking forward to 2020, because as Andy had pointed out when we started this season, they really are set up well for next year.
Yes, they are.
Mandy, much appreciated. Thanks for coming on. Looking forward to having you on again when anything breaks through the off season, or if nothing happens, then we'll talk to you again when the season starts. But it's always a pleasure. Mandy Bell, Indians.com, Indians beat reporter, and follow her on Twitter at MandyBell02. Mandy, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Mandy Bell, thank you. And as a Boilermaker fan, please have gentle gloves on, as I think they're a 30-point underdog today in Happy Valley. So Anyways, we'll talk about different podcasts. It's basketball season for West Lafayette. Can't get the hoops long enough. Mandy gave a lot of good tidbits of stuff that you don't read about or don't hear about. And I don't want to go on a tangent, but I guess before we go into this other stuff, I kind of want to go into Zimmer. Because I found the Zimmer comments really interesting because 2 years ago, we were all on, Oscar Mercado's our guy. Well, Zimmer was that guy 2 or 3 years ago. Now, Mercado played a lot better than Zimmer did, but Zimmer was going to be our big star. Zimmer's going to be our big athlete. And Jared, it's weird, hearing from Mandy and hearing that Zimmer's not going to be playing in Arizona.
Again,
murky.
It hurts him because there are guys that are playing their way onto this roster.
Yeah.
That will not be denied a spot that was expected to be his.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, I don't want to play the whole, I don't know everything. I don't know Zimmer's reasons for this, but I feel like we've been waiting around a lot.
Said. Well said.
Who else did this? Grady Sizemore-ish.
Grady
Sizemore waiting for this. You could even say Michael Brantley for a good part of his career his career with the Indians, where you're just waiting for him to come back. Salazar was another one.
Salazar and Zimmer have had
where
very
you're just
similar
waiting,
careers.
or like what? Like you, come on, get on the field.
Yeah.
Get on the field.
Zimmer and Salazar is a great comparison. I guess we'll go to this first question up, then we'll go to the pitching. She brought it up, but I know your feelings about Puig. I agree with Mandy, and I said in a previous podcast, I just don't know where their spot is for Puig.
I know.
It doesn't mean that he shouldn't be coming back, though. Because, by the way, if you add Puig, the Indians' outfield is actually a huge strength. It really is. I mean, you go from
such a flip it's such a flip from where we were at the beginning of the season.
It really, really is. Because if you think about it, if you do bring Puig back, you're going to have Reyes. I think Daniel Johnson's going to make a push. You definitely got Mercado. Mercado's got to play every day. And then you got Naquin and Luplow, who I like that combination. I like the Luplow-Naquin combination, Jared, a lot. So if Puig does come back, Reyes is definitely your DH, and man, it changes everything. I just don't think they do. We'll have to see over time, but the right field, I guess it's going to be left field, according to Mandy, it sounds like. So we'll have to see what happens to left field. The other thing I'll bring up quickly, though, about Puig, to be fair, that people need to remember, his arm is a weapon. And I will say, people tend to forget that, and I will not. You are losing some runs being scored because of Puig going bye-bye.
Yeah, and
you are. He's a wonderful arm.
It's a rocket. It's a rocket.
Oh, and he's actually not a half-bad fielder. He's not great, but he's not bad. Anyways, it'll be interesting to see what they do with Puig, but boy, his gun is unbelievable.
Well, I think it depends on, not only that, but obviously money. And I don't know what they would, where's that? Where do they plan on spending their money? Right. That's what we got.
I would think I think a bullpen or infielder.
Right.
I would think so.
Right.
Well, Kluber's coming back. So I'm not going to overhit it because we talked about enough of Mandy. Kluber, Carrasco, they're going to bring them in. Tito will have them starting unless they really look poor, but I doubt that's going to be the case. And then you got Clevenger and Bieber. So there's only one more spot for Plesac, Savali, and Rodriguez. So I think it's going to be.
That's why I said, move those guys if they can go for length and if those egos don't get in the way. That's
right.
That's right.
And I didn't mention Plutko either. Mm-hmm. So Plutko too. So you really do have this large amount of things on this horizon for this team. Here's my big statement though about all of this. If I were the Indians, and it's risky, but if the deal is right, you may want to really think about bringing in a big bat for one of these guys. If the deal is right, because the Indians have a plethora of pitching and young pitching, and you can get someone who's really again, it's dangerous. It's so dangerous trading good young pitching. It's major league proven. So when I say this, it's got to be something where, Frazier from the Yankees. You can bring Clint Frazier on. I might do it for Savali or Plesac. Might do it. Because
you know the dangers of making deals with the Yankees, though. Too.
I know, but Clint Frazier's a star.
I know
he would do such amazing things. But anyways,
the Yankees probably feel. I mean, that's a piece that's missing for the Yankees, right? I mean,
and by the way, he's not even going to play. And by the way, they're dominating the Twins. We'll get to that at the last segment. Yeah. But anyways, that I think the rotation, and to Jared's point, how it plays in the bullpen. Quickly in the bullpens, we hammered with Mandy. I think they're going to have to add a couple more pieces in. I doubt they bring Tyler Clippard back unless Clippard takes a discount. Maybe he does, by the way. It seems like Clippard. By the way, I thought Clippard pitched pretty well. There's no chance you see Otero. There's no chance. By the way, the Danny Salazar experiment's finally over. Nothing against the guy. I really hope him and wish him the best. I think he's going through some mental stuff. And I really hope everything's okay with him. But the Danny Salazar experience is over, too. Yeah. So they're turning over some no-leafs there, which will be good. But I think adding to the bullpen makes a lot of sense. And then, the last thing's the infield. But that's kind of how I see it. And then, let me ask you, what would you do? I think, even though he may not be the most ready, I think I'd put Chang at third.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with him growing into the spot. I think that the Indians are strong enough everywhere else that you let him develop now. Might as well. I thought that he stepped up well in his time that he spent with the team
did too.
Last season. I know that that maybe there's some more development there, but come on, man, let's just do it. The Indians and Tito, they've proven that they know how to develop these guys. I just don't have doubt. And Andy, I struggled at times even last season with staying patient. But I did trust the process. And at the end of the day, not getting to the postseason isn't really where I know that that's where most will measure success, obviously, for obvious reasons.
That's understandable. That's understandable. Yep.
But, at the same time, this isn't the NBA where the top 8 teams get in. The Indians did well enough where they could have gotten in, and it just didn't work out. 93 wins,
Injuries killed this team. For everything this team had to overcome, injuries were just too much to overcome. I know where you're getting at.
The development of the young guys is what got them to where they were by the end of the year.
What's amazing?
That's what got them to 93 wins.
What's amazing to Jared's point? Think about the Royals. The Royals won by the way, they won the World Series, to be fair. But the Royals are so depleted that they're so out in the wilderness, it's unbelievable. The Indians have kept pace, and that's a real credit to what you just alluded to. To keep pace and to keep growing, and to say the Indians can actually go for it, which I think they can in 2020, and be a big player against some of these teams. I think this team's going to rock and roll and be confident.
Indians could win 100 games next season. I know that. I'm serious. They can win 100 games, and I would not be surprised if one of those starters ends up getting a no.
The only thing is the Brad Hand thing and what's going to go on that bullpen. That's the only little thing I'm worried about. And then this last point. I think the one thing I will caution us and caution everybody, because I'm very high on this. I just get the funny feeling this Lindor stuff. I don't think he's going to get traded. I don't. But I think it's going to really heat up. And Mandy hit on it, and I've been hearing it already. I think the Lindor trade talks are really going to. I think when you and I are doing this in November, we're going to have a weekly Lindor update trade rumor. Starting like December and January.
I have a feeling that I'm going to be okay either way.
It's a big step down if they lose Lindor, though.
Well, we'll see.
What to see is right. And I guess we'll leave it on this note. I mean, I think I made my feelings very clear. I think the Indians are going to be so good next year. Now, the Twins are rising. The Twins have a good young team, too. We're not naive. You can't just ignore that. But all that to be said, I think the Indians are right there. They're going to make a big push. And if I'm being honest, the Astros have to win these next 2 or 3 years. The Yankees have to win these next 2 or 3 years. I would maybe argue the Twins have to. I feel like the Indians have a 3 to 5 year run.
Yeah.
Because of the youth, because of how they stack things, because they have pieces and parts, because they have tradable things. The Indians are really set up well. The Indians are going to be consistently good for a long time, and that's exciting. And I think next year they're going to be very good if Lindor's on the team. If Lindor's gone, I don't know.
No argument. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I think we end up. Quickly, and then we'll wrap up. I do. Do you care about the baseball playoffs?
I'm not watching. Andy, I get like this.
I know you did last year, too.
Right? I do it when it's like my thing with the Browns. If the Browns don't win, I can't. I want nothing to do with anything, with any media, any of that. I don't listen to the morning shows. I don't listen to any of it when I'm going to work like I usually do. You catch me on a Victory Monday, and I got that shit blasting on my radio into work. I mean, that's how I am. When it comes to this, when the Indians, when they got knocked out, it was great. I went to my last experience with baseball this season was at Nats Park last weekend.
Nice.
That was it. That's it.
Nice.
Baseball's over. I'm done.
Well,
I'm done.
I'm still watching.
Next season.
I'm interested to see the Nationals beat the Dodgers. We all know the Twins won't beat the Yankees. I mean, that's just. I mean, there's death taxes. The Twins losing the Yankees.
This is why I don't want to watch it, because that's a bummer. Because the Indians would have beat the Yankees. That's how I feel. I mean, I just I don't want to watch. I'm good.
Yeah, no, exactly. All right. Well, that's it for the Tribe this year. I'm very excited about 2020. I think we will repeat ourselves after that point. And I'll give more baseball playoff thoughts, and Jared will take his bathroom break during that portion of the show. But I will say, just real quickly, I do think, though, there's a lot to be excited about for the Indians, and Jared hit it well. The long-term planning is wonderful.
Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Cleveland and Beyond, on Twitter @CLE and Beyond. Shoot us an email, andyandjared@gmail.com. Follow us on our websites, clevelandandbeyond.net, andyandjared.com. Podcast is everywhere you find podcasts, on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and your Alexa device. And don't forget, check out Waiting for Next Year, original Cleveland sports reporting, waitingfornextyear.com. Thanks for tuning in. 2020 is going to be one hell of a year for the Indians. I'm looking forward to it. I know Andy is. We'll talk again soon.